The Libertarian State Leadership Alliance presents, in this video, Lunch with keynote speaker Angela Keaton, our 2017 National Conference, The Future of the Libertarian Political Movement, introduced by Larry Sharpe.
Angela actually, she has some education, which I'm disappointed. I was hoping she wasn't educated, because then she could be cool like me. In any case, she actually has, hold on, see if I get it right here. She actually has a JD from the University of Florida. She's the executive director of antiwar.com. Antiwar.com, yes, also known as the Rudolph Born Association, Institute. Randolph Born Institute. Thank you very much, yes. She was described as a right anarchist objectivist. Not too shabby. Before also, and she was aligned with the paleos, so they're right, paleo conservatives, yes? Now she's aligned with the left libertarians. But this is the most important part. She crochets. She lifts weights, hardcore, I like that very much. And here's the critical piece, she can describe the Jenner-Kardashian family tree without using a chart. Wow. Yes, very impressive. That will be enough, but I'm going to give you more. Please welcome everybody, Angela Keaton.
Larry, thank you for that great introduction and that description of what I thought was going to be heterosexual marriage, but turned out no, just to be systems of governments.
I'll take that too.
The GSM folks know what I mean. This just as a warning, if you're used to typical libertarian speeches and political correctness and very polite decorum, this probably is not the keynote for you. The exit doors are all over. I'm not holding anyone hostage here, and George knew exactly what he got into when he asked me to be the keynote. So, and I'm very, very glad to be here, and thank you. This is a wonderful event and a wonderful time to really talk about the things that matter. Two panels have already happened this morning. The one that I was on, which was about end the war, which is a huge part of what it is I do. But the other part was the panel we just heard in here, which was about the alt-right and the Nazis and other undesirable people coming into the movement. And these issues are actually linked. The issue of race, the libertarian movement, and our issues with not being able to keep a solid libertarian peace camp, or keep the centrality of not using government money to kill people. Which should not be a controversial position in 2017, but amazingly enough, this is a very radical idea. Mass murder, I'm against it, and that somehow makes me the oddball. Which makes you wonder what kind of society we actually do live in. One that's based on violence. The violence, yes, the old joke, right? The violence is inherent in the system. And you can't replicate that system or maintain it in any form and not have the violence. And not have racism, sexism, homophobia. And you certainly can't have any sort of semblance of traditional values under it either, which is one of the great paradoxes of all this. Empire kills any sense of egalitarian spirit, it kills any ability for people to be truly equal, it also destroys traditional cultures. Now that we've said that though, I want to get kind of into the meat of this and the part that will irritate the hell out of everyone. The long time discussion of race and the alt-right and so on has a genesis much, much earlier than any of this Trump thing. In fact, the libertarian movement being a libertarian for me in my adult life and activism, such as it is, has mostly been not really doing external activism or really preaching the truth of peace to people, but it's more been just fighting off various right-wing incursions from different groups over time, and this goes on all the time. That is my history of libertarianism, constantly fighting against, struggling against right-wingers, primarily men, okay, almost entirely men, generally from very similar demographics, and they come from all different forms of the right. And over time in my adult life, I'm a second-generation libertarian, I've come to believe that inherently, as long as we continue to base libertarianism on classical liberalism and very traditional notions about the founding fathers and and the myths on how America was developed, we'll continue being right-wing. We can't get from freedom from where we currently start. I was originally going to call this speech Wargasm, Racism, the Alt-Right, and Libertarian Movement. but orgasm seemed to be a disturbing term to some. It's not my term. A feminist named Robin Morgan came up with it, where she describes it's not just inherently conflicts, but the very notion of the way men resolve conflicts and patriarchy will always lead to war. Now, I'm not really ready to go there. That's probably for a different underground group or something we'll do at the Alt Expo someday. But for here, I just want to give a little background, because it's reducing, it's kind of acontextual about the alt-right. See, I'm old enough, and I know it's hard to imagine, but I was really a young, delicate flower in the 90s. I was very much alive and active in the movement. And I remember when the Cato Institute was obnoxiously anti-PC. I remember when the Reason editors were horrible and over the top and saying things that now we would consider utterly inappropriate. Now, because I bring that up because it's, we've rewritten history. It's all about the newsletters and Rothbard, and that's a bunch of nonsense. The biggest crock of crap that's ever been thrown. The fact is, most of the institutions that have led the movement, including the Libertarian Party, have always had a far-right bent in the leadership. So much so that I remember, and this was not long ago, I was elected to the Libertarian National Committee in 2006. At that time, we were in the middle of one of the many right-wing takeovers. In this case, they wanted to rewrite the platform to take out any semblance of any criticism of any government. They wanted to make it so bland that you could not tell the difference between us and some nice, sweet Republican, neighbor friend of yours who has no more controversial beliefs than maybe taxes should be lower and, maybe we should do something about crime. I remember being on the Libertarian National Committee, and I remember when Chris Bennett and I wanted something as benign as the Women and Minorities Caucus. We would never describe it like that now, but back in the olden days, last decade, we used quaint terms like that. And I can remember people as progressive as Jim Lark saying, we don't need that. In fact, I can remember Mr. Lark saying things like, those kind of people, or he told others, certain kinds of people shouldn't be on the Libertarian National Committee. Now, I'm not going to parse that out, but for many, many years, the Libertarian National Committee was not any sort of bastion of diverse thinking, certainly not representative of what most people did in the movement, and certainly not reflective of any demographics of any libertarians. I live in Los Angeles. Libertarians there come in many different colors and from different class groups and different genders and different sexes because we live in Los Angeles. Libertarianism has looked like that for a long time, just no one wants to recognize it because we don't encourage it in the leadership, and we do things to actively repress it. A few things about selectivity, okay? I want to give you a couple quotes that are going to disturb you because everyone forgets its history. This is one of my favorites, okay? We can't accept all the shit that walks in off the streets. That quote was by the great economist, historian, philosopher Murray Rothbard. It's called Having Standards, all right? Most of you don't know that because you never read Jerome Duchilly's It Usually Begins with Ayn Rand. It's a real old classic comedy novel. It's comic, it's funny, it's hilarious, but it very much describes the history of the movement. And that was Rothbard's attitude. We don't have to take in everything. We're not so desperate that we need to take in goats. Is the guy who wants to have sex with the goats? I forget, the goat eater, the Florida guy, I forget what you call him. He's got the crazy Aryan name, a Norse guy, whatever. I know lots of, I was in the 90s, I was in the punk rock scene. I know all kinds of white supremacists and Odinists and weirdos. And I also knew Antifa. These are nothing new about any of these groups. They've been around for a long time, and they research, and they come in different ways. But we didn't need to leave the door open for them. But the thing is, we left many doors open for them. I'm going to read you another quote that's going to blow you away. It's from one of my favorite websites, Stormfront. I always enjoy a good neo-Nazis. Well, not neo-Nazi, they probably are actual Nazis, but it's always good to inhabit your favorite Nazi site. This is my favorite quote by a heartbroken white supremacist. In the fantasy world that guys like Ron Paul live in, the destruction of the Federal Reserve would result in all cultures, races, and religions living in multicultural harmony. It was always perplexing to me how many white nationalists were involved in his laughable campaign for his presidency, and even more so how many people thought he was even remotely on our side. I want you to let that sink in for a second, because I think there's some real deep misunderstandings about what's actually going on in the world. Yes, that's right. The Ron Paul message was not really good for racists, so why did we get so many? Well, let's go all the way to kind of the top of things. As recently as 2004, David Bose, the vice president of the Cato Institute, would write articles saying that, gosh darn, these public schools shouldn't be teaching so much about feminism and black history. We need to focus more on the Constitution. Now, the way the history has been rewritten is something that everyone at the Cato Institute marched on Selma, when in fact, no, they were right-wingers until very, very recently. It's only when we rediscovered, every 10 years we rediscover the newsletters scandal, which has always been weaponized to destroy the anti-war movement. It's never used to kill racism in the movement. It's always used to demonize the peace activists. It's been weaponized repeatedly to destroy the anti-war movement. And it's a way, it's always been a cover for different kinds of racism. When people talk at the leadership level in the movement, especially in the mainstream libertarians who talk about anti-racism, they mean anti-some kinds of racism. Okay? There are no career penalties for supporting genocide in the Middle East. Randy Barnett's considered a very respectable, serious libertarian scholar and anarchist, even though he advocated in the Wall Street Journal for the destruction of the Iraqi people. His career is just fine. Bring Lindsay, a former vice president of Cato, also professionally and publicly and enthusiastically supported the invasion in Iraq. There's no career penalty. Greg Lindsay spent a few weeks ago on Twitter making a little scene for himself talking about the Ron Paul racists. I don't remember Ron Paul advocating genocide. Okay, genocide, the killing of an entire people, okay, that is the outcome of racialism. That's where racism goes, is genocide. But that's perfectly acceptable. It is a perfectly acceptable and respectable position within the libertarian movement to advocate genocide. Just depends which ethnic and racial groups you're talking about. That's racism. Okay, that's a racist movement that supports that. The fact that that's been left to go unchecked and unchallenged makes me really question whether some people have any damn idea what the hell their privilege is. So no, I'm not supporting this. So the part of the culture war between paleos and the cosmos, or whatever we're calling the different teams these days, I don't give a damn which set of right-wing idiots runs this movement. It has nothing to do with my activism. It's not about libertarianism. So, all right. You know I can't not discuss the big elephant in the room, my editorial director, Justin Raimondo at antiwar.com. Justin seems to have had a great deal of faith in Trump. So did I used to write for LRC, LouRockwell.com. I wrote some of the best blog entries of the things I'm ever going to write. I no longer write there. I was too racist. That's why I got kicked off. This happened a long time ago, not a big deal. My racism was questioning the white privilege of people at the Cato Institute. That's why I was asked to leave the blog. Think about that for a second, too. I know, it's weird, huh? Yeah. I know, people are they're looking at me confused, like, what? What? No, think about it. I did something that's taboo. I talked about the fact that the Cato Institute and IHS and all the related groups have been running like white country clubs for years. They've always been exclusionary. They've been exclusionary to how gay you can be there, what ethnic groups are allowed to speak, who's tokenized, and what their policies are. This has been going on for years. The door has been left open for white supremacists because we have all the damn doors open for them all the damn time. That's why. Okay, it did not just magically come because Lou Rockwell said something one day. This has been going on for decades. And it was going on the LNC until fairly recently, and it goes on in terms of most of where the power structure, the people who make the leadership decisions in this movement. Okay, it's so bad that for those of you who care about libertarian history, I would like you to look up a name, Williamson Evers. He was one of Rothbard's cronies. He and a man named Tom Palmer, who was a former vice president of Cato, wrote in National Review, this was in 2005, how important it was that they go over and help the now liberated Iraqi people rewrite their constitution. Now I want you to think about this for a second. Racism is bad, correct? We're against that racism thing.
Yes.
We're against collectivism. We're against oppression.
Yes.
So what in God's name would make us think it's morally acceptable under any circumstances to have libertarians go to another country that is occupied by the US and help write a constitution for these now conquered people? That's sick. That's weird and sick. Their careers should have been ended. Okay? The career should have been over. There should have been no more libertarian career money. These people should have been literally told to leave and live someplace else, because how dare you go into someone else's country and someone tell them how to live their lives? That isn't libertarianism, that's bullshit. I'm over it. Now, I'm very guarded in what I can say now currently about anyone at antiwar.com that isn't me, but I didn't like it when Justin Raimondo talked about, oh great, there's a rumor going around that Donald Trump is considering Williamson Evers for Secretary of Education. For fuck's sake, Justin, really? It's the last damn person anybody should be wanting for anyone for any reason whatsoever. I'm not arguing with moderate libertarians anymore about some wars, okay? I'm no longer having any more discussions about white men who went through the IHS program or they went to George Mason about how some wars are justified. If you're talking about murdering children, get the hell out of here. You can't just, no, there's not even, that isn't a debate. It isn't a discussion. Okay, you have no inherent right to steal from anyone to kill other people. There's no such right, no such right exists in the universe. If you think there's such a right, I want you to show it to me. And then be comfortable with the fact that I might could run you down or something, I don't know. If that life is not that valuable to you, hey, then why is your life so valuable? I mean, really, think about it for a second. So I'm kind of over that too. Libertarians leave many, many doors open. Let's talk about the Milo Yiannopoulos door for a second here, and the Richard Spencer punching debate. And when I wrote some of this, I wrote some of this back in February when I was really seriously thinking about a lot of these issues. And one of the things was, is this in the context of both Yiannopoulos being shouted down and Spencer getting punched. All right. Liberals and libertarians everywhere spent a whole week, canoodling with each other and whispering free speech and finger wagging about these hypotheticals about what happens if we don't stop people from punching Richard Spencer. Okay. It's a hypothetical stance. It's a hypothetical stance, and it's a reactionary stance. First off, if you're supposed to be conservatives or right-wingers of some kind, who gives a damn if Richard Spencer gets punched or not? A man's supposed to be able to take a punch. He got punched once in public, big damn deal. Okay, it's not the end of free speech, no one's being rounded up, no one's books are being burned, a guy got his face punched. Okay? Who the hell cares? Alright? And then there's the Berkeley protest discussion. Okay, this is the protest, the protest that should accompany the continued expansion of the imperial presidency didn't spark any outrage among the grassroots, except for the grassroots on Facebook. But the size, the analysis, the conspiracy crankery that went to some loudmouth, getting punched, and the brats at Berkeley screaming into the wind, oh my God, someone burnt a garbage can. Oh, there's chaos on campus. No one has free speech. That's a bunch of nonsense. We libertarians have milked the anti-peace thing on campus long enough. First of all, they're state universities for the most part. Who gives a damn what the hell goes on there? Second of all, universities are where government grants go on for they're part of the military-industrial complex. They're part of the places where militarism and nationalism is completely reinforced. Why the hell do we give a damn about them anyway? It's not our job to be worried about whether or not somebody can say this. And to be honest, I give money to FIRE, right? Free, whatever the hell, that's our free speech group, whatever. But the fact is, I like them well enough. But mostly it's for people who get outraged that they can't scream nasty things about Palestinians and Arabs on campus. They feel oppressed because they can't use terms that I won't say in here, but that's what they feel is oppression. So, okay, maybe you are oppressed if you can't scream ethnic slurs on campus. I don't know, but maybe that should not be the cause we lead with. Maybe the free speech discussion should be a much larger discussion beyond what the hell 22-year-olds are doing in between their, whatever the hell they teach on campuses now. I haven't been on one in 20 years except to speak. People were getting on my rear end the past several months about, why don't you fire Justin, or why haven't I completely condemned Walter Block to hell because of the Trump train? Let me explain something about the triviality of this and why the racism issue is such a broader issue. Okay. The only opposition to Justin and Lou were a different flavor of authoritarianism, the lesser evil. Okay? Lesser to whom? The victims of violence abroad? Okay, the victims of violence abroad don't give a damn who runs our movement. Okay? They don't give a damn which kind of ideology is killing their children, destroying their soil, ruining their infrastructure, ending their cultures. They don't care. Okay? This is really, really important about libertarianism and privilege. Because for most people, libertarianism is a white paper. Oh, I got my Cato white paper here about why we should do a carbon tax or some nonsense. First off, no one comes to libertarianism because they read a white paper from Reason Foundation. And if they did, they're a freak. Okay? That just doesn't happen in real life. Okay? Most people become libertarians because they are victims of violence in the state. Okay? We didn't get here because we went to an IHS seminar when we were 15. It's because some of us actually experienced violence at the hands of the state. Okay? Including some of our parents, people who are not straight, people who are not cisgendered, people who came off the boat very recently, people whose families that we were kidnapped 400 years ago, and people who originally lived here but were wiped out, have a different perspective on that. Okay? The US regime kills their children, wipes out their lands, and destroys their culture. That's what it does. It's called genocide and has a name. And before everyone gets all upset that I'm not a free speech person, I'm absolutely team wood chipper. I'm like if you don't know that reference, you want to Google it, it has to do with Reason Magazine. I have an ACLU card, I love Nat Hentoff, I hate PC, I'm extremely rude and foul, and I make people as uncomfortable as possible, that's my job. But I'm not going to pretend that somehow these abstract free speech discussions, okay, are on a real footing. Okay? All the power in every discussion belongs to the state. The interests of the people and the institutions involved are not equally situated. The division between public and private isn't clear in most of these cases. They're not delineated. Okay? You can't retrofit a free market over an empire built on genocidal colonialism, kidnapping, and chattel slavery any more than you can compare the KKK to the Black Panthers, which libertarians do, like idiots. Okay? You can't call for equality when entire racial groups are besieged by the police state. It's just nonsense. It's not even a fair, reasonable discussion. Okay? Now, everyone was upset about the Trump train, and there's Walter Block going on about Trump. All right? But it isn't the Trump train that's the problem. It's libertarianism that's been the problem. Okay? It is what libertarian looks like now. Supporting candidates who threaten to vaporize 77 million Iranians, okay, who was guaranteed to look the other way when the Palestinians are wiped from the earth. That's well within the respectable range of libertarian thinking. Okay? That main door has been open for all these people. So you see how many different doors and pathways there have been to right-wingers coming into the movement. Okay? We waited until the last possible minute until we found a window where Goat Guy and Cantwell and these other ones. Cantwell, who wants to put me in the ovens. I'm the second most oven-worthy libertarian in the movement. I consider that's very high praise, I guess. I don't know. I mean, this is what libertarianism looks like now, and this is our own fault. Okay? So, now, in addition to between the two different sects of libertarianism, this is a very old way of thinking. This was pre-Ron Paul, but it still manages to persist that we have these two camps. We have the people who love Trump, but we also have people within the mainstream of libertarianism who repeatedly write articles that appear in very respectable publications about how radical Islam is one of the 3 greatest threats to liberty. Okay? That's a big bunch of nonsense, but because we have people who think that State Department white papers are libertarian theory, that gets away with it. People will oh yes, radical Islam, caliphate. I wore something over my head, the Islams are coming to get me, or some nonsense like this. People don't realize how stupid they sound when they even talk about Muslims or Central Asians or Persians or Palestinians. Libertarians especially sound like idiots. We should stop speaking until we actually learn something. But the point is, whether it be the Trump trained people, or whether it's the people mainline libertarians who scream about radical Islam, they've merged seamlessly together. So now at the very top we have this nice right-wing vortex. Okay? I don't want any part of it. It's not libertarianism, and we need to strike the root on this. And that means perhaps changing where our source of liberty comes from. Anarchism is for everyone. Okay? It's theoretically and universal. All right? You can't build an ideology based on ideas that were considered kind of radical back during colonialism and chattel slavery, and when women weren't even people. And the constant founding fathers fetish and the other nonsense that we keep going back to, those are tactics. They're not strategies or philosophies. When I talk about states' rights for pot or gay marriage, which is kind of old theories now, okay, that's a tactic. It isn't for states' rights. Those were tactics. Those weren't ideas. Now, we do a lot of tactical things. Like, yes, we talk about the Constitution for people for whom that works. But the Constitution isn't a freedom document, okay, any more than, yes, I'm sorry, you know, just, I live in reality now. I stopped buying our own bullshit years ago when I stopped watching John Stossel. Everyone what they want me to do is they want me to make some public sacrifice. So we kill somebody's career over Trump. And that will make all the racism go away like a sacrificed goat, okay? It's not. It's not changing things. I know I've made some people in here uncomfortable by mentioning certain topics, like Palestine. I don't give a damn. What I do give a damn about is when moderate libertarians unironically retweet people like David Frum. Okay, David Frum is mostly known for his ardent support of genocide, okay? When you see moderate libertarians retweeting neoconservatives positively because they're, quote, never Trump, all you've done is traded one form of racism for another. You've done nothing, you've changed nothing. You're in the same exact place you were before, okay? So the problem isn't really the Trump train, it's libertarianism. If we don't do some soul searching on this, if we can't bother to even center the most basic things, the most evil things the state does, like killing children, like being an environmental threat, which is what the Department of Defense is, destabilizing countries, foreign aid, what bases are stealing of land. We use a lot of crazy leftist terms sometimes, like colonialism and occupation. All that means is stealing. Something libertarians are supposed to be against. When you talk about occupation, now you're stealing and on it, and you're screwing things up. That's even a bigger crime. These are things that are inherently unlibertarian. I shouldn't have to explain a whole damn hour of theory to explain why an apartheid state is not libertarian. I shouldn't have to go on for hours to explain that why using the largest military might in the world on other countries that have no business, that we have no quarrel with and don't know, and other people's sovereign nations, which is really none of our damn business what other people do. If I have to explain to you why any of that's not libertarian, okay, our internal education has failed. And I have to wonder which one of the doors you all came in through. All right, there's my rant. I wish everyone well, and I'm going to get back to eating something. All right.
The Libertarian State Leadership Alliance